So I'm Justice Dixon, currently a Master's in Commerce student at the University of Virginia. I'm specializing in marketing and management. I am from Tampa, Florida, and I completed my undergraduate degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering at Princeton, and I graduated from there in the spring. Although I was an engineer in undergrad, I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I did several internships in engineering, and I really enjoyed that. But I also felt like I was more drawn towards the project management or like leadership part of engineering. And because of that, I wanted to go to business school. And I felt that this program was kind of a nice balance where I wouldn't be out of the workforce for too long, but I would also get a lot of the skills necessary for me to kind of move towards the more managerial side of engineering versus the technical side. I worked 3 internships in engineering beforehand, but as far as full time out of school, I did not know. I guess the importance of non-consulting inclined students, because I feel like a lot of master's in management programs in the US are kind of catered towards people that want to do some sort of consulting after undergraduate, and that's not something I was particularly interested in. And so I was happy when I spoke with several staff at UVA before coming, and as well as several students at the time. Although most of the students I feel like do end up going towards consulting, a lot of the resources at UVA, such as the career services, mentorship, and everything else, also are able to provide resources and guidance towards people that are more interested in other business areas versus just consulting. Another factor for me was also athletics. So because of the pandemic, I actually got an extra season of eligibility for track and field, and I wanted to use that eligibility. If I was going to go to business school anyways, I wanted to use the eligibility while I was here. And out of the schools I was looking at, University of Virginia definitely had the best team by far, and I felt like I have a lot of respect for the coaches here and the athletes, and I feel like that was also a major driving point for me. Also, another big part of it was the cost, because I was on a bunch of financial aid for undergrad, so I actually didn't have to take out loans. But for graduate school, that's a little bit more difficult because you usually have to. But University of Virginia was able to offer me a decent amount of academic scholarships, which helped reduce this cost to where I wasn't necessarily concerned about taking out loans. It is definitely time intensive, I'd say. I'd say it's more so there's a lot of class time, specifically now. It started out kind of building into things, just a couple of classes. You had a lot more free time. And at this point, I think from what I've heard from past students as well as from the professors, we're in kind of the most rigorous part of the course, right before winter break. So we're taking multiple classes, a lot of classes back to back. So you're spending a lot of time in class, and a lot of the classes are discussion based. So that is a decent sized commitment. But as far as the workload, I'd say it's very manageable. A lot of it is team based. So if you're able to work efficiently and effectively with the team that you're assigned to, then you're able to get a lot of things done on time. I still have to stress about that. I'd say the biggest thing is kind of just time management skills. And if that's something that you've learned in undergrad, then you won't necessarily struggle here. But it definitely is, it definitely is a commitment. And especially for athletics, I practice anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours or so a day now. So that is a commitment, but I feel that I was able to manage that in undergrad particularly well with engineering coursework, which was very time intensive. So I feel like I've been able to do so as well here. It's just been a function of working, communicating with my team, making sure that we all knew each other's expectations, set deadlines for each other, and making sure we get things done efficiently. I'd say definitely, because for this program, it would be very, very easy to fall behind. So when we had midterms, we also had assignments during the midterms. And so it was very easy kind of just to push those on the back burner. But I'd say doing so kind of, I wouldn't say punishes you, but it definitely hinders your ability to kind of maintain a balance, a work-life balance if you do that. So as long as students here, I feel like, know and kind of make themselves get work done on time and efficiently, then it takes a decent amount of discipline, but it definitely is manageable, I'd say. I'd say both of them are kind of similar in some ways. So my coach here, Coach Freeman, I love her. She's an amazing coach. A big reason why I chose Virginia's track team over other teams when I was looking at just the athletic side of coming here. But she's very, very tough. She makes sure that we're giving everything our best. She's making sure that everybody is on top of themselves, staying healthy, especially now given the pandemic, making sure we're doing the right things. So it is a big commitment, not just time-wise, but also like mentally and physically. And I'd say that's kind of the expectations that she gives are kind of similar to a lot of professors are, where they're not unreasonable. They've never asked me to, I've never felt like they've asked me to do something which I couldn't do. And whenever students have given feedback and maybe brought up that, okay, maybe this week there's too many projects to do during this time frame, maybe we could expand that out. They've been very accommodating. They actually just recently did that for next week, because next week was looking like a tougher week. So I'd say that they're very accommodating and they're very understanding, but they also expect, as graduate students in commerce, they also expect a lot out of us. And they expect us to take the studies very seriously and to do what we can in order to succeed. So I think that they're very similar in those two ways. I think they're similar in a lot of important ways. The biggest way is, I feel like with both approaches, both from like an engineering mindset and also like a business management mindset, there's more than one way to solve a problem. So everybody, whenever we're assigned like cases to like research, understand, kind of evaluate, and then give our take on like, I guess, ways that the certain company or the firm in the case can improve or do things differently. Every team comes up with different answers. So there are different approaches, and that's the same thing with engineering. There's always a different way to solve a problem. Some ways definitely are more efficient or more practical than others. But I wouldn't say there's one right answer to everything. The way they're different is, I'd say a lot of it is in the coursework itself. So engineering was very time consuming outside of class. In class wasn't very interactive. You were mostly just in a lecture, wasn't necessarily discussion based unless you had a question. And then you would take that outside of the classroom, either work by yourself on a problem or work in a team. If you're doing a more hands-on course, you do the design work together, the actual construction and all that together. And with commerce, I'd say it's kind of the flip, where I'd say it's more intensive during class, to where essentially all of our classes are very discussion based. So the professor is frequently coming to the students to say, what do you think about this? Can someone give me an example about this? What are your thoughts on that? So it's very collaborative between the professor and the students and the other students. And then when you take that outside of the classroom, apart from working with your team, it's aside from the teamwork, it's very individualistic, where you're reading up on the cases. Maybe if it's an assignment, you're doing that mostly by yourself. So I'd say it's kind of just a flip between engineering, where engineering it's very very collaborative outside of the classroom, where in commerce it's collaborative inside the classroom. And apart from projects that you work on together, a lot of the main work, like the reading, assignments and all that, are mostly by yourself. So there are three, specializations. There's the finance track, the business analytics track, and then the marketing and management track, which is what I'm in. Commerce as a whole, I'd mostly just describe it as the business ecosystem. So how, on most of a macro scale, how businesses interact with each other, how they interact with the forces at play and what they have to deal with. But also on a smaller scale, the smaller, decision making. And I'd say it's more so, it's just how a firm or how an individual manager interacts with the ecosystem that they're in and how they operate within that ecosystem. Specifically for marketing and management, I'd say it's more focused on the manager taking in and assessing a lot of the information they get, whether that's like hard data that they get, or that's softer, like speaking with some of their coworkers or some of the people that they're obliged to manage, and kind of just using that to make assessments of the situation. So whether that be changing your business strategy, changing how you communicate with your consumers, or just, I guess, different ways to change your business to adapt to the ecosystem. The changes in the ecosystem, I'd say, is the best way to describe it personally. And I feel like the marketing management track has definitely taught me a lot about that. So where I came in knowing a lot of more technical, harder skills, I was very math-based undergraduate, very data-driven. And I feel like I've learned a lot of other, not necessarily not data-driven, but skills that you'd mostly take for granted. So kind of assessing different business strategies and their viability, not necessarily just on data, but just based on past cases and experience, to where you see what works, what doesn't work, and what unique or different circumstances different things can function in, and different ways that you and your team can work effectively within given constraints or given some outside force that kind of shifts the industry entirely. So I think it's giving me a pretty good skill set with that, and I'd say that's the most significant thing that I've probably learned from the program thus far. I'd say it's definitely shifting my way of thinking. So as an engineer, my thinking was I'd say it's very personal. So where even if you're working in a team, teams of engineers usually function where people have different ideas, and then you bring those ideas to the table and you kind of deliberate or even debate what you think is the best approach, and then your group kind of settles on something in the end, whether it be by like votes or your leader decides. It's individuals coming together to achieve something as a team. Whereas I feel like the commerce program has kind of taught me a different way of thinking, where it's more interactive even before that. So with engineering, it was interactive after you come up with the initial idea. And with a lot of what we're doing now in projects and classwork, the interaction starts before you actually come up with ideas. So it starts when you get the problem. So for instance, we're working on a current case, assessing, I guess, different business decisions of AT&T. And before my group, any of us came up with like ideas of how we would actually solve the problems. We all went through the case together, pulling out things that we thought were interesting, things that we thought just we built on, things that we thought were fine, and then kind of developed ideas together in a team. Like we had to do it. Some of us are in person here, so we could meet in person. Some of us were virtual, so there was a little bit of a barrier there. But we were all able to collaborate and kind of make and kind of coalesce an idea together of how we wanted to move forward before any of us did any individual thinking. And after we all kind of made that idea come together, then we branched off into our respective roles and kind of worked on our own for different parts. And then later we'd come back together for a similar process, refinement, going away, coming back together, etc. So it's a lot more, the teamwork and collaboration, I feel like what I've learned here is a lot more front-loaded versus back-loaded. So it's definitely a different way of thinking and a way that I've appreciated learning, because it's definitely, I feel like, is useful in different situations. If you are interested in marketing management or like a management master's, anything related to that position or graduate program, I'd say the biggest thing to know and to look for is what you hope to get out of it. So for me, the biggest thing coming here was I wanted to do things that weren't necessarily just consulting, even though most students here do consulting, and a lot of the career services are catered towards consulting. But I'd say if you're looking for a program that doesn't necessarily just focus on that avenue, then I think this is an excellent program, because I feel like it kind of gives you a business skill set and a business mentality that touches so many different aspects of business. And I feel like if you are interested in a leadership position in business, that is an essential skill set to have, to where you're not just specialized in one area of the business, where you're not just a marketing person, you're not just a manufacturing person, you're not just a general financial consultant, where you're able to touch on so many different areas of the business, so that when it comes time, not for you, I mean, not even in your work, just for doing interviews, where you're able to speak on your experiences and your knowledge of different areas, where you say, I was able to do this, that, and that during class. This is what you're looking for in an applicant, and I feel like I'd be able to touch on all these and do these very effectively. So I think it gives you definitely a big edge when it comes to the career search, where you're able to kind of touch on a lot of the skills that you learn. I mean, it's only been about, I'd say, 12 weeks since we've been here, and I feel like I've already learned a lot, and I've been able to touch on a lot since I've been here. So I say just marketing that during your job search after McIntire, but also just moving forward, just having those skills in general is definitely huge. So I'd say with the business program, the biggest thing is looking for a diversified skill set. And I feel like my experience here has definitely kind of solidified that for me.